Hello, friends, and welcome to this week's weekly wisdom call. Okay, so we did have a Q&A that I went ahead and look at that. You can see my socks. Hi, welcome to real life, right? Um, so we did have a question that got asked by a client this week that I wanted to get into. And before I do that, I wanted to just talk to y'all about something that has been coming up for a lot of clients this week and really just leaning into the messaging and the understanding that I feel like God has really been providing for me. For our family, for our clients over the last several days. And so, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as business owners, as executives, as leaders in our family home too, um, I think that there's two big things that I've been hearing about from other people who are in those positions, right? So I'm a mom of three. We have pets. Just a little trigger warning, our dog of 13 years passed away on Monday due to illness. And I'm married. I have parents who are in their late 60s. We have grandparents who are in their 80s and 90s. We have a house. We have two cars, thank goodness to God. And we've got all these things. We've got all these responsibilities. We've got all these places that we have to-dos. We have things on our list. We have expectations. We have accountabilities. We also have clients. We have you might have patients. You might have customers. You might have employees. People who directly report to you. You might have independent contractors that you collaborate with. You might have people that you do work for. So even if you're in a leadership role, sometimes we still, quote unquote, answer to other people. We directly report to other people. And we are accountable to them for specific tasks that they delegate to us, for specific, jobs and roles and responsibilities that they give us. So there's a lot going on in most of our lives. And so forget, when we forget that the world setting our responsibilities is not it, when we forget that, in fact, we want to really allow God to set our priorities, allow God to set our to-do list, allow God to set our responsibilities and our plans as much as possible, as much as possible. um, when we remember that, like, things shift a lot. And so I think the world a lot of times is going to try to convince us that we should be prioritizing what it wants us to prioritize, that we should not take care of ourselves first, that we should not put God first and then ensure that we have what we need in order to be successful and then um, give to others. Because a lot of times we are operating from this place of where we put the world first, we put what other people tell us is the most important first, and we shift around our priorities and change these things. And then we go, okay, what do I need now? Or we can get kind of selfish, and I don't mean that word uh, negatively. We can get kind of self-absorbed when we then get really burned out, we get really exhausted, we get really tired, and we're like, you know what, forget it. I'm gonna just say no to everything everybody asks me, and like they're inconsiderate for even wanting this from me, and like how dare my kids want this, and how dare my boss want this, and how dare this client want this, and how dare my husband want this, and we can start to get really resentful and frustrated by what other people are asking of us or what other people are, expecting of us based on what we've agreed to or based on like implicit agreements that maybe we haven't fully fleshed out. We haven't done that container setting or boundary setting conversation. So I see this show up into like these two ways for leaders. I see leaders go into this place where they allow other people um, to take priority over God. And I see where they allow themselves to take priority over God and other people. And so, like, the Bible teaches us first God, then loving our neighbors as we love ourselves. We've talked about this, I think, the last couple of weeks. This is going to be a central theme, obviously, because of the two greatest commandments that Jesus gave us. Love God above all others, seek God first, and love your neighbors as yourselves. So I see leaders really struggle around these two things, because when you think about it, these are two flip sides of the coin. And there's so many terms that get thrown out. Just this week, I've been talking to several leaders, and there's lots of like phrases that get thrown out in this area. So like burnout, um, scope creep. So burnout is where you start experiencing like significant mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, relational fatigue because your needs have gone undermet or unmet for so long that like you are just chronically depleted. So this is like chronic exhaustion over time. Um, Scope creep, where, we are in relationships that we define at the beginning, and then one or both parties kind of don't hold the boundaries around that. And one party starts asking another party to do things that were not originally part of the agreement. And the second party like does them without clear clarification around, okay, like, yes, I'm willing to do those, and this is what I need in order to be able to do that, or no, I'm not willing to do that, or I'm not willing to do this extra thing you're asking for like this. And those are really tough conversations to have, particularly if we have been raised in a society and conditioned by a society that says either put yourself first and put other people second, and then God somewhere over here in the third to maybe fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or you've been taught to put everybody else first and put yourself second. And again, you're still not putting God first, because God tells us that we need to love one another as we love ourselves. So by putting God first, we make sure that we are having well-boundaried relationships. That's what God wants us to do. He wants us to ensure that we can act with integrity, that we can just fulfill the obligations that we commit to. The Bible talks about this in several places. Like, do not commit to something. Do not speak with your words a vow or a commitment, and especially to God. Like, do not do that unless you are willing to back it up with your words. Like, mean what you say and say what you mean. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're not going to do something, don't do it. Like, God says that. He's like, it's better for you to not say it at all, to not vow it at all, to not promise it at all, than it is for you to promise it and then go back on it, whether it's with God or it's with another person or it's with yourself. But I think a lot of us have been taught to, as leaders, like, we've gotten ahead by a lot of times allowing scope creep to happen. We've gotten ahead a lot of times by allowing other people to be placed above us in terms of the priorities in their lives. And this is something I've been personally really like wrestling with, I guess would be the term, like wrestling with, particularly this week. This is one of the first weeks in my life where it's been really, okay, how am I going to do what I said I'm going to do? And that also means, how am I not going to do what I said I'm not going to do? So if I said I was going to complete a task, then how am I going to complete that task? Also, if God and I have been having a conversation about not complaining, not getting self-absorbed and like getting frustrated about something that is not going the way I want it to, then how am I going to do that? Like, if I say I'm not going to complain, then I need to not complain. I need to repent every time I do complain. I need to really be on like self-aware around that, not self-absorbed, but self-aware to notice where are those things happening. When the people around me are holding me accountable and saying, hey, you said you weren't going to do this, I'm noticing you're doing this, not getting frustrated or defensive and being like, yeah, okay, you're right, thank you. And so learning to hold these boundaries, learning to show up in a way that doesn't allow for scope creep, and also really looking at, am I entering into relationships with people who like perpetually expect scope creep? Like, if you have a pattern of getting into relationship with people who are always asking more of you than what you originally agreed to, that's something for you to look at. Did you hear what I said? If you are getting into a relationship with people who persistently ask you for more than what you originally agreed to and expect to not have to give anything else in return, what's going on there? What has the world taught you? Can you take that to God? Can you pray about it? Can you ask him to show you what you need to see around that? Because there might be some conviction that gets to happen around that. There might be some sanctification, some like clearing out, releasing, like trauma recovery work that gets to happen there. And God's a really great person to do that, or really great being to do that with. So um, that's the first part of this, is really thinking about, okay, am I actually putting God first? The second part about this is, and I kind of just alluded to it in that last example, but how do I really notice where I'm not doing that? How do I notice where I'm not doing that? And so there's another term that I wanted to pull out here, because I've been having this conversation with several healthcare providers, clinical providers. Healthcare is tough right now. I mean, the world's tough right now, and healthcare in particular is breaking in a lot of ways. Like the sustainability of the current system has been called very, very intensely into question, and for good reason. And um, moral injury is a term that has been coming up a lot. And so moral injury is basically where you get put into situations, either you put yourself into situations, or somebody else like manipulates you or tries to put you into a situation where, in order to do what is expected of you, or the right thing, you also have to do something wrong. Like, in order to make something better, you also have to make something worse. In order to fix something, you also have to break something in order to do these things. But it's done in a way that violates your morals and your ethics. So here's an example of what moral injury looks like. A lot of first responders, a lot of military personnel, a lot of healthcare providers, a lot of people that we refer to as high responsibility humans, humans who are put in like situations where they are actively on the line and accountable for people's lives, their livelihoods, or their living standards of living, their money, so their resources. This looks like the system telling you, hey, in order to save this patient's life, you've got to do this thing that is going to actively hurt or harm them. And you're sitting here going, but like, why am I trying to save this patient's life for a day when like their condition is not sustainable? So we see this a lot with end of life care, where we as providers will be oftentimes like forced, because of the standards of practice at our hospitals, because of the ethics committees, because of how we do medicine, we will be forced, against what we feel like might be our better judgment, to continue to try to promote the quantity of life and the length of life, and to really hurt or harm somebody from a quality of life perspective in order to do so. So this can be just so tough. This can be so tough, because you're sitting there going, I'm actively hurting this person. We referred to this as rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Like, we know that this person is not going to survive. We know that this person is not doing well. And yet we're over here trying to do all these very painful, like life-sustaining procedures that will probably only keep them alive for a day or maybe a week. And for me, in those examples, when I was in the ICU or when I was in bone marrow transplant, a lot of times it felt like I was playing God. It felt like we were actively trying to work against this natural process. Like, this person had gotten to a point in their life where like they were done. And we experienced this with our dog this week. And being on the other side of this, it was really tough. It was, okay, is it time to actually take him to the vet and give him medicine and put him to sleep, because he is in pain? Like, I can tell from a provider perspective, like, he's got swelling in his abdomen. He's really struggling to walk. He's starting to do some of the natural things that dogs do when they are at their end of life. Like, whenever we let him outside to go to the bathroom, he would just like go over to the side of the house and sit in the sun, and he like wouldn't want to come back inside. He'd like tuck himself kind of behind this bush. That's what animals do. That's what animals do, except we're in this very like artificial environment where we've got animals who would naturally be living outside that are now living inside. Animals who would naturally be scrounging and hunting for their food, they're now inside. So we're able to sustain his life. We're able to do these things. And like, is that truly what we should be doing? And so it was a really tough decision, because, we love him and we want to be with him and we want to have those things. And also, like, we knew in our hearts, like, it is time for him to go. It is time for him to like be done. And so that was really tough. That was really tough. And I bring that example in because there wasn't moral injury there. But what happened was because of all of those previous experiences that I had had, all of those previous experiences at the hospital where it was like, I think it's probably time for this person to be done, for us to like really focus on keeping them comfortable and helping them like pass peacefully, and being told like, no, there's still more we can do. No, we should try to sustain this. No, we should go for more quantity. I noticed that even in this like scenario, 5 years after leaving clinical practice, I was doubting myself. I was doubting myself because it was like, well, I don't, but like, what if I'm playing God? No, I'm not playing God. I'm not, that's not what we're doing. What we're doing is going, this person is in a, or this puppy, I call him a puppy, he's in a ton of pain. And by giving him pain medicine, by giving him what he can have in order to help him be more comfortable, he is going to pass. That's a natural consequence of taking away his pain, is that he is going to pass. So I share that because moral injury can show up in a lot of ways where we are told to do things like, this is not, and in your heart, like if you sit and pray and get still and listen, God's like, this is not the way. And yet the system, the world is telling you this is the way. And when our livelihoods depend on that, when there are legal and ethical and like moral and all of these implications, it can be so tough to listen to our hearts. And it can be so tough to be like, this is the right thing for me to do. This is what, like, this is willing. This is me loving this person. This is me willing their good. So that's one part of moral injury that I see with leaders. And it's what leads to a lot of scope creep. And it's what leads to a lot of burnout. It's what leads to a lot of moral injury in the workplace. And the issue is when moral injury is kind of thrust upon us, like when the world puts us in positions that make it really tough to even know what the right thing to do is, and also to honor our morals and our ethics, and our values, to put God first and potentially lose our livelihoods, potentially lose our incomes and our resources, potentially lose our reputations, potentially have some pretty negative things happen. It makes total sense that we as humans sometimes like just go along, like we go with the flow, we do the thing. But when that starts to happen over and over and over, that leads to burnout. And then when we have that happen, we get so dysregulated because we are living out of alignment with our values and our morals. And a lot of times we start numbing. We start doing things outside of work. We start doing things like it starts creeping into our personal lives. It starts creeping into our personal lives. And so we start drinking or smoking or like shopping or like, yeah, or doing something to numb out. We start scrolling, we start sleeping or not sleeping, we start using stimulants, caffeine, amphetamines, like we start doing a lot of these things. We maybe start like looking for a dopamine fix. I was talking to a client about romance novels this week, like looking for something that's going to like distract us, numb us out, like help us disconnect from this very real moral injury that we are experiencing. This, like, I'm not showing up in alignment with how I know God wants me to show up. And then from there, we start being the cause of the moral injury because a lot of the things that we do to numb and dissociate lead to issues. So if you're checked out on your screen and not paying attention to your kids, there's disconnection there. If all you do is come home and complain about work and your spouse can't get a word in edgewise, then there's disconnection there. If you are so exhausted that you can't cook anymore, and so you just start eating a bunch of junk food, which again, I'm not against, like, please hear me. I'm not judging anybody for what food they put in. I survive on coffee and protein shakes a lot of the time. Okay. So like, please hear me. I mean that there's other things that we could be doing to nourish ourselves better, and we don't do them because we are so exhausted. That then leads to further moral injury because we're like, I'm not taking care of myself, so now I'm further depleted, and I'm having to go back into these external situations where I get injured more, and it just becomes this very like vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy. So I share this with you because if you are going through this, welcome to humanity. You are not alone. Every single human that I've ever met does this. Priests struggle with this, like religious clergy, like ministers, like people who are their job is faith, spreading faith. Like they struggle with this, and they struggle with this a lot of times more than most. People who are in positions where they are expected to just like be perfect a lot of the time, they struggle with this more than most, I think. So if you are struggling with this is like really resonating with you. I see you, I hear you. And um, I would invite you to, if you're not already part of our Roots of Business membership, I would invite you to our 7-day assignment um, course program that we have coming up on September 8th. It is going to be phenomenal, in my opinion. It's 7 days of us really like spending 30 minutes or less a day, like getting back into a biblically based practice of making sure we are well resourced first and then going from there. And um, I think my invitation to you also is just to like really ask yourself all of these things that I'm doing internally, where I am trying to put myself first and not loving others at the same level and not putting God first, or where I'm trying to put others first and I'm not loving myself or loving God first. In those scenarios, like, was I taught to do that? Is that happening because of some external factors that are present that if I protected myself from, if I got into prayer and really asked God, like, hey, can you remove some of these things from my life? Like, can you remove the things that are not meant to be in my life? Which is a very scary prayer to pray, by the way. That is a brave prayer. I've prayed that prayer several times in my life. Every time I do, it's a brave prayer. I prayed that prayer about 3 weeks ago. Hey, God, can you release anything that is not like that is not of you, that is not of your will? Can you order things so that I am better able to do your will? So anything that needs distanced, please distance it. Anything that needs brought closer, please bring it closer. Anything that needs released, please release it. Anything that needs received, please help me receive it. That's a scary prayer. And that's a prayer that puts God first. That's a prayer that says, okay, I don't want to commit moral injury anymore to myself. I don't want to be a victim of moral injury anymore. So, God, can you please help me release and receive so that I can be more in alignment with your will and put you first and love others as I'm loving myself? Like, that is a God-centered prayer. So, of course, your flesh is going to really struggle with that as things start to get released and as you start to receive things and as things start to happen. And what I will tell you is, it is really phenomenal. Like, it is awe-inspiring what changes when you pray that prayer. It is awe-inspiring what changes when you pray that prayer because things move and things shift quick if you mean it, right? And you can also tell God, like, I am scared. I am scared of this prayer. I am scared to pray this, and I trust like you will be as gentle with me as you know that I need. You know my heart, you know my capacity. And this is where we really get to lean into God's strength too. This is where we get to lean into God's strength and remember that his grace is sufficient and we can do all things through him, Christ who empowers us, and those pieces and parts. So like that's a really big piece here. So yeah, it is oftentimes very, very scary to decide that moral injury is and scope creep and burnout are things that you are no longer going to accept, receive, and allow to be the standard of your life because God does not want that for your life. Like I think a lot of things are up for interpretation. That is not one of them. God does not want you to be continually experiencing moral injury, consistently experiencing it. He does not want you burned out. He does not want you consistently allowing others to violate your boundaries or you violating other people's boundaries. Like he does not want that. That's not love. So, and God's love. So he's like, that's not of me. I don't want, like, I'll use it if it happens. I will use it for your good and for the good if you freely choose to do it. And that's not what I want. I want to provide for you. I want to protect for you. I want to give you the things that are best for your soul. And yeah, your flesh might hate those things. And also, I will tell, this is the last thing I'll say about this. My soul being in pain with my flesh happy, my soul hurting with my flesh happy feels exponentially worse than my flesh hurting with my soul happy. Like my flesh hurting with my soul happy is an unbelievable feeling and is something that through God's grace, like the ability to be strong enough to tolerate that, the blessings that come out of that are beyond. Like I spent a lot of time in my life with my soul in pain and my flesh happy. And my soul being filled with joy and my flesh sometimes being like, this sucks. Way better experience. Way better experience, okay? And it's tough. It's really tough because this is a muscle you got to build. Because at first, like your soul, like the transition from flesh being comfortable and soul being uncomfortable to flesh being uncomfortable and soul being comfortable, like both are uncomfortable for a minute. Your soul's uncomfortable for a minute and your flesh is uncomfortable for a minute. So you're like, this is trash. 0 out of 5 stars. Do not recommend. Why am I doing this? That's why. Okay. So the Q&A, the question that I got asked earlier this week was by somebody who is a business owner in one of our programs. And they asked, they said, you know, I see all these people in my life who are not spiritual. And, you know, as a business owner, like my business is a secular business. I'm still kind of searching and seeking and figuring out where I am in terms of faith and spirituality. And so they were asking me, like, how do you talk to people who maybe don't believe yet? Or how do you approach this in business when you know that like Jesus is the answer, you know that going to God and taking it to him and seeking him first is the answer, but like what do you do when you've got somebody in front of you, a coaching client or an employee or a customer or, you know, a colleague who doesn't believe or isn't necessarily super open? Like how do you counsel them when they're like, oh my gosh, the world is whirling and everything is super tough? And I told them, I said, look, I have clients who are not Christians. I have clients who are open, but who are very much questioning and who are not Christians and who are not like they are kind of at the beginning of that journey. And I remember that God's going to do the work on them. Like it's not my job to do the work on them. God's got it. Like if God wants me to do something specific, if God wants me to say something specific to them, he will lead me to that. And I pray for that before all of my calls. I ask God to guide my words. I ask him to decrease so he can increase. I ask him to I pray your will, not mine, right? So I ask him to give me what he wants me to say to this person. I ask him, like before these, I ask him, like, guide my words. So I do that. And then I remember, like, if this person is open, God will work on them and God can use me for their good. So me loving them looks like me willing their good, which means me not pushing my agenda on them. So I go back to my expertise. I go back to what I know about our nervous systems. I go back to what I know about natural cycles and rhythms. I go back to a lot of that stuff and I come out of the spiritual and I come down to the practical because that's where this person needs support. This person needs support practically. So, you know, if this is somebody who's really struggling with all of the pain and the confusion and the uncertainty and the politics and all of the things happening in the world, I ask them, how much are you consuming? Like, how much time are you spending on social media? How much time are you spending consuming content that is dysregulating? And a lot of times people are like, oh, a good amount. Ooh, the wind closed the door. A good amount. I am, I'm on here a good amount. So we go back to trauma recovery 101 and I say, look, the first step of trauma recovery is safety. So safety is a felt sense. Safety is not something that we can like measure. We can have data afterwards to say, oh, you know, 10 unsafe things happened in the last 1,000 days, and in the 1,000 days prior to that, only 5 unsafe things happened. So things have gotten doubly unsafe. We can do things like that. but something can feel safe to me in a situation that feels unsafe to someone else. So a kid being sick in front of me, like somebody getting hurt in front of me and breaking their arm, I feel safe in that situation. I know, okay, I know what to do in this situation. I know how to help. I know how to support. I know how to like, I have the capacity and the understanding, the wisdom to be able to handle this. So that feels safe to me. But to somebody else who maybe has trauma around breaking their own arm and who doesn't have any medical training and who maybe has some other things going on, like somebody breaking their arm, a kid breaking their arm in front of them might feel profoundly unsafe. Like that might to their nervous system go, oh my gosh, this is a threat we can't handle. Because that's what safety is. It's does my nervous system perceive that this is a threat that I can handle? So when we are getting exposed constantly to things in the outside world that are outside of our control, that's going to increase our natural sense of feeling unsafe. So one of the first things is to distance yourself from things that you cannot control, that you cannot have an effect on whether they change or not, at least like at the level you are being exposed to them. Okay. So that's one of the first things I tell people. I'm like, are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? Are you eating food? Are you nourishing your own body? And are you taking in a bunch of dysregulating content, even 20 minutes a day? Like, because that's going to change your perceived sense of safety. That's going to change your felt experience of if you are safe or not, because your nervous system's getting exposed to all of these things that it cannot control. And so it's going to feel more threatened. That's the first part. The second thing I invite people to do is, okay, what is in your control? So number one, making sure you're resourced. That's in your control. Number two, like, where can you go do something with your hands? Instead of doom scrolling or instead of, and I don't mean just doing something with your hands. Like there's actual studies that show that people who like sign a petition for something, they are less likely to go into their own communities and help out. People who participate in social justice or activism online are less likely to actually go into their own physical communities where they have more power, more control, more ability to really change something and participate there, because their brain goes, I've done something by commenting on this social media video negatively. I've done something by signing this petition. I've done something by sending this $5. Boom, check. Okay, I can now feel in control about the fact that this thing happened. I see this a lot with people who write. They will write a lot of commentary. They will share articles on news media. They will do a lot of things where they're like, oh, I'm promoting awareness. And it's like, okay, but when we promote awareness, sometimes that promotes dysregulation, and then people are less likely to actually be resourced enough to do something to help others. So, are you volunteering at your local soup kitchen? Are you going through your house and finding canned goods and taking them down to the food pantry? Are you going through and finding clothes you don't wear anymore and taking them to, the local homeless shelter? Are you checking in? And again, I'm talking to people who are secular, so there's not going to be a lot of church involvement here usually. But is there a local organization that you can even spend an hour with a week, or a half a day a month, or one day a year, and like go and help? Do you have neighbors in your neighborhood that you have never met who are elderly that you might even just go and give your phone number and be like, hey, if can I get your phone number? And anytime I go to the grocery store, I'll just text you and see if you need something. Hey, can you have my number just in case something bad happens? You can call me and I can come over day or night and I will help you. Like if you fall, if something happens, like we don't do that anymore. I'm looking out at my little cul-de-sac right now. We don't do that. We don't, because we're so out here focusing on things that are happening in schools and things that are happening in politics and things that are happening across the world, where we have no or very, very little influence. And we get so distracted by that we forget we have influence right here. So that's what I encourage people to do. Go be a part of something that you care about. Go be with like where your physical hands are, with somebody else's hands physically together in that space. Go do that, because that is going to create resourcefulness, because that connects you to people, that connects you to purpose, that gets you in motion in a way that feels really aligned from a moral and ethical and value-based perspective. So go do something. Go do something. That actually is going to make a difference. So that's what my answer is to that question when people say this. And if people are open to it, I actually start with this. I forgot to say this part. If people are open to it, what I start with is statistically, this does not feel this way. So just hear me and go, you can go research this for yourself if you'd like. Statistically, as humans, we are the safest we have ever been. As a population, humanity, the 8 billion plus of us, we are the safest we have ever been. We have the most access to resources. We have the most access to technology. We have the most access to the ability to stay safely housed, clothed, and sheltered. On the whole, we have the best access to fighting diseases. We have the best access to information and being able to find things quickly that help us to be better resourced. We are the safest we have ever been from a measurable standpoint. And I know that's tough to hear because people are like, what about climate change? And what about politics? And what about this? And what about that? Yes, like, but you do not need to believe me in that statement. There are very famous scientists out there who will tell you that, like, with measurable data, that like our kids are the safest they have ever been because they actually like grow up to see 18 comparatively to 100, 200, 500 years ago. And yes, there's so many things more that we can do in those areas. Absolutely. And like, so that is not a political statement. Please hear me. That is not a political statement. That is a Christian statement of we are the safest objectively that we have ever been from a scientific perspective. And God's got us. Like, God's got us. So as Christians, our perception of safety gets to come from the place of God's got us. God's willing our good here and eternally. So if people are open to hearing a statement like that who are not Christians, like, I will share it with them, but sometimes people just don't believe that. And that's okay if they don't. Again, God will work on them. That's not my job. It's not your job. And so, yeah, that's how I'd answer that question is one, making sure that you are personally getting nourished in a way that is best for you. Obviously, I think prayer and God is best first. And if they're not open to that, at least starting with their own practical nervous systems. And then two, go do something with your hands in person with other people who care about what you care about and who you care about. Go do that. So, I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do hope that you will join the 7-day assignment if you decide to do so. I will drop the link below. Remember, agency clients, you've got that. Roots of Business membership clients, you have access to that. So, and if you're not in either of those spaces and you would like to be, you can just simply send me a DM or you can sign up for the 7-day assignment below and we will get you in and get you connected. So thank you so much, y'all, for joining me.